In September this year, the Employment Standards legislation bill passed its first reading in Parliament. That bill is now moved to the Select Committee stage and is due to be reported back to Parliament in February 2016. When the bill comes back, it's likely to be split up into 5 different amendment bills, impacting on 5 pieces of key employment legislation here in New Zealand. This video blog is going to talk about what those impacts mean for the Parental Leave and Employment Protection Act. The Employment Standards legislation bill proposes a broader application of the parental leave entitlements. This includes extending provisions to self-employed and to where employees have changed employers. An interesting change that is proposed by the bill is the introduction of a concept called primary carer. Now, a primary carer is a person who has primary responsibility for the day-to-day care of a child under the age of 5. This person could be the birth mother, it could be the spouse or the partner of the birth mother, or it could also be another person who is either the birth mother or the spouse or partner of that person, provided that the person is not a foster parent or is just not undertaking temporary care of the child. So the bill introduces some changes to the terminology which we're all familiar with when we're talking about parental leave. Maternity leave becomes primary care leave, and the partner's paternity leave, that becomes known just as partner's leave. There's also a new leave type which is called negotiated care leave, and I'll talk a wee bit more about that soon. So a wee bit about primary carer leave. So primary carer leave, what we previously knew as maternity leave, that increases, if this bill goes through, from 1 April 2016 to 18 weeks. So at least 18 weeks. And that correlates to an increase in the paid parental leave period, also to 18 weeks. To be eligible for primary carer leave, the employee needs to be the primary caregiver for the child. They also need to meet either the 6-month employment test or the 12-month employment test. Now, both these tests are the same except for the duration of time. So the employee needs to have worked for at least an average of 10 hours per week for either the 6 months prior to the delivery date of the child or the date of taking up the role as the primary caregiver. That's the 6-month test. Or for 12 months for the 12-month test. So the bill introduces a new leave type for parental leave, and this is negotiated carer leave. And negotiated carer leave comes into effect where an employee is not entitled to primary care leave, but they are entitled to paid parental leave. That's the government-funded paid parental leave, the 18 weeks. Now in this case, the employee has to request leave from the employer. They must do so in writing, and they must set out how that can be accommodated. The employer has a month to respond to that request, and they have similar criteria against which to make a decision in terms of accepting or refusing the request, as is currently the case for flexible working arrangements. So there's 7 criteria set out as grounds for refusing the request, and the employer must respond to any request for negotiated care leave within a month of receiving that request. If they fail to do that, they could face a penalty of $2,000. Another interesting change, which we're going to see if this bill goes through without too many changes, is the ability for the employee to split their extended parental leave. So at the moment, if the parent is going to take extended leave of either 26 weeks or 52, depending on what their entitlement is, they have to take that one continuous block of time. And if they came back to work before that period was up, then under the current legislation, their extended leave is deemed to have ceased. Well, this bill changes that. It turns it on its head and enables the parent who's taking the extended leave the option of being able to come back to work for their employer for anywhere from a minimum of 1 hour to a maximum of 40 hours. Now, provided the employee who is on extended leave comes back to work, whether it's for that 1 hour or up to 40-hour period, provided they do so outside the 28-day period after which the child for which they took the extended leave was born, then that's fine, they can do so. But the period for which they work does not extend the period of extended leave. So the 52 weeks or the 26 weeks is still locked. It just means that part of that time they've come back to work, so it doesn't extend the leave. However, if they come back to work before the 28th day, then that does bring the extended leave to a halt. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of the changes which are likely to impact on the parental leave legislation is a change in how the employer will be required to calculate the employee's average weekly earnings. Now, what this bill does is it still looks at the 52-week period prior to the employee commencing their leave, but it requires the employer to look for the 26 weeks, any 26 weeks in that 52-week period, which provided the highest pay for the employee. So you pick the highest 26 highest pay periods in that 52 weeks. You total those up, divide it by 26, and that will give you the average weekly earnings. So there you go. That's a high-level overview of the changes which the Employment Standards Legislation Bill are currently proposing to the parental leave legislation. Now, whilst things might change between now and February 2016 when the bill gets reported back to Parliament, you've at least got an understanding of the thinking behind the bill and how that might play out should things go through as they are.